The autumn winds of 1987 swept through Cedar Rapids, Iowa, carrying with them the scent of dying leaves and an unshakable sense of unease that had settled over St. Margaret's Catholic Church. Father Thomas Mitchell stood at his office window, watching the October rain streak down the glass as he clutched a steaming cup of coffee. It had been 3 days since Sisters Maria Elena Vasquez and Catherine O'Brien had vanished without a trace. 26-year-old Sister Maria Elena had arrived at St. Margaret's just 18 months earlier, her dark eyes bright with devotion and her Spanish accent adding warmth to the morning prayers. Sister Catherine, only 24, had been part of the parish for 3 years, beloved by the children she taught at the adjacent elementary school. Both women were dedicated, punctual, and had never shown any signs of wanting to leave their calling. The police had questioned everyone. Detective Robert Hayes, a methodical man in his 40s with graying temples, had spent hours interviewing parishioners, staff, and fellow sisters. The nuns' personal belongings remained untouched in their shared quarters above the rectory. Their beds were made, their habits hung neatly in the closet, and their prayer books lay open to the pages they had been reading. Mrs. Dorothy Brennan, the church secretary who had worked at St. Margaret's for 15 years, wrung her hands as she spoke to Father Mitchell. "They were here for evening prayers on Tuesday, Father. I saw them myself. Sister Maria Elena was arranging flowers for Wednesday's service, and Sister Catherine was reviewing lesson plans for her second-grade class." The last confirmed sighting was at 9:15 Tuesday evening, when both nuns had been seen walking from the church toward the rectory. By 6 o'clock Wednesday morning, when they failed to appear for morning prayers, their absence sent ripples of concern through the tight-knit religious community. Father Mitchell, then 38 years old with premature silver streaking his brown hair, had been pastor of St. Margaret's for 5 years. He prided himself on knowing his flock, but the disappearance of the 2 young nuns left him grasping for answers that seemed to slip away like smoke. The Cedar Rapids Police Department treated the case seriously. Detective Hayes interviewed every person who had contact with the sisters. The investigation revealed that both women had been in good spirits, actively involved in their community work, and showed no signs of distress or desire to leave religious life. As days turned into weeks, theories emerged and faded. Some whispered about a crisis of faith, others about family emergencies that had called them away. But no evidence supported these speculations. No phone calls had been made, no letters written, no transportation arrangements discovered. The mystery deepened when investigators learned that both nuns had been working late in the church archives. During the weeks before their disappearance, Sister Catherine had mentioned to fellow teacher Margaret Sullivan that she and Sister Maria Elena were organizing old parish records and had been staying after evening prayers to complete the task. Father Mitchell remembered giving them permission to access the basement archives, where decades of church documents were stored in filing cabinets and cardboard boxes. The space was cramped and poorly lit, but the sisters had volunteered for the tedious work of cataloging and organizing the historical records. Winter arrived early in Iowa that year, and with it came the gradual acceptance that Sisters Maria, Elena, and Catherine might never return. Their families were notified, prayers were offered, and slowly, painfully, life at St. Margaret's resumed its rhythm without them. The investigation remained officially open, but as 1987 became 1988 and then 1989, the case grew cold. Detective Hayes retired in 1995, taking with him the frustration of never solving what had become known locally as the mystery of the missing nuns. 27 years later, in the summer of 2014, Father David Chen arrived at St. Margaret's as the new pastor. At 42, he brought with him a practical approach to parish management and a keen interest in preserving church history. The congregation had grown substantially since the 1980s, and the building required significant renovations to accommodate modern needs while maintaining its traditional character. Father Chen had heard whispers about the 2 nuns who had disappeared decades earlier, but the story had become more legend than documented history among current parishioners. Mrs. Brennan had retired in 2003, and most of the staff who had known Sisters Maria Elena and Catherine were no longer at the parish. The renovation project began in earnest during the hot July of 2014. Workers from Kozlowski Construction, a local company that specialized in historical building restoration, carefully assessed the church's structural needs. The sanctuary required electrical updates, the basement needed waterproofing, and the altar area showed signs of settling that concerned the architects. Jim Kozlowski, the company owner and a lifelong Cedar Rapids resident, approached the altar, renovation with particular care. "Father, we're going to need to move this altar temporarily," he explained to Father Chen on a sweltering Tuesday morning. "The foundation underneath needs reinforcement, and we've detected some moisture issues that need addressing." As workers began the delicate process of relocating the marble altar, they discovered that it wasn't as permanently fixed as expected. The altar had been installed in the 1920s, but modifications in the 1960s had created a small gap between the structure and the wall behind it. "That's odd," muttered Tony Carlson, one of Kozlowski's experienced workers, as he examined the space revealed when the altar was moved. "There's definitely an opening back here, Father." Father Chen joined the workers behind the altar, flashlight in hand. What they found was a narrow passage, barely 3 feet high and 2 feet wide, leading into the wall itself. The opening had been carefully concealed by a removable stone panel that matched the surrounding stonework perfectly. "This wasn't on any of the architectural plans we reviewed," Jim Kozlowski said, consulting his folder of building blueprints. "This space doesn't appear in the original 1918 construction documents or the 1960s renovation records." Father Chen felt his pulse quicken as he shined his flashlight into the dark passage. The beam revealed that the opening extended back several feet before turning to the right. "We need to explore this properly," he said. "But let's proceed carefully and document everything." The discovery generated immediate interest among the construction crew and church staff. Father Chen contacted the Cedar Rapids Historical Society and the diocesan office to report the finding. Within hours, news of the hidden passage had spread through the parish community. As word spread, longtime parishioner Robert Hayes, now 73 and retired from the police force for nearly 2 decades, appeared at the church. The former detective's interest was immediately piqued when he learned about the discovery. "Father, I don't know if anyone's told you about Sisters Maria Elena and Catherine," Hayes said, his weathered face serious. "They disappeared from this church in 1987. I was the investigating detective, and I never forgot this case." The connection between the hidden passage and the missing nuns seemed tenuous at first, but Hayes's presence added gravity to the situation. "Those sisters had been working in the church archives before they vanished," he continued. "They were down in the basement, going through old records. I always wondered if they had found something." Father Chen decided that exploring the passage required professional assistance. He contacted Dr. Elizabeth Warren, an archaeologist from the University of Iowa, who specialized in historical site investigation. Dr. Warren arrived the following morning with proper equipment and a graduate student assistant. "Before we enter this space, we need to test the air quality and structural stability," Dr. Warren explained. "Hidden areas in old buildings can contain hazardous materials or unstable conditions." The initial assessment revealed that the passage was structurally sound and the air quality was acceptable. Dr. Warren's team used fiber optic cameras to examine the space before human entry. What they saw on the small monitor screen made everyone present fall silent. The passage led to a small, rectangular chamber approximately 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 5 feet high. The chamber contained what appeared to be documents, boxes, and other materials that had been deliberately placed there. Dr. Warren entered the hidden chamber first, followed by Father Chen and retired Detective Hayes. The cramped space had been carved from the thick stone foundation of the church, creating a secret room that had remained undetected for decades. Battery-powered lights revealed the chamber's contents in stark detail. 2 wooden crates sat against the far wall, their surfaces covered with nearly 3 decades of dust. Beside them, a metal filing cabinet stood partially open, revealing folders and documents. Most significantly, a large manila envelope lay prominently on top of one crate, with "Urgent Read First" written in neat handwriting across its surface. "Nobody touch anything yet," Dr. Warren instructed. "We need to photograph and document the position of every item before we disturb the scene." The documentation process took over an hour. Each object was photographed from multiple angles, and the overall layout of the chamber was meticulously recorded. Only then did Dr. Warren carefully retrieve the manila envelope marked "Urgent." Father Chen opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were several handwritten letters, photocopied documents, and a detailed note dated October 13, 1987, just one day before the nun's disappearance. The first letter, written in Sister Catherine's careful script, began, "If you are reading this, then Maria Elena and I have either disappeared or something terrible has happened to us. We discovered information that we believe puts our lives in danger, and we have hidden the evidence in this chamber that we found while cataloging the church archives." Hayes leaned forward, his detective instincts fully engaged after all these years. "What kind of information?" Father Chen continued reading aloud. "While organizing records from the 1970s and early 1980s, we discovered financial documents that show systematic theft from church funds. Father Andrew Morrison, who served as pastor from 1975 to 1985, was embezzling money from the building fund, special collections, and parish donations. The letter detailed how the nuns had initially thought the discrepancies were accounting errors, but as they dug deeper into the archives, a pattern of deliberate financial manipulation became clear. Father Morrison had been skimming money from various church accounts and falsifying records to cover the theft. The total amount we've documented exceeds $47,000, Sister Catherine's letter continued. But we believe the actual theft may be much larger. Father Morrison worked with someone at Cedar Rapids First National Bank to hide the transactions. Sister Maria Elena's letter, written in a mix of English and Spanish, provided additional details. She had used her background in bookkeeping, skills she had learned before entering religious life, to trace the financial irregularities. Her analysis revealed that the theft had begun shortly after Father Morrison's arrival in 1975 and continued until his transfer to St. Augustine's in Des Moines in 1985. We confronted Father Morrison about our findings on October 10th. Sister Catherine's account continued. He initially denied everything, but when we showed him the evidence, he became angry and threatening. He said that exposing this information would destroy not only him, but would scandal the entire diocese. The most disturbing revelation came in the final paragraphs of Sister Catherine's letter. Father Morrison told us that other people were involved, including bank officials and someone from the diocesan finance office. He said we didn't understand how dangerous these people could be, and that accidents had happened to others who had caused problems. Hayes absorbed this information with the grim expression of a detective who had seen too much human corruption. So they weren't just dealing with embezzlement, they were being threatened. Dr. Warren carefully examined the wooden crates, finding them packed with meticulously organized financial documents. Bank statements, canceled checks, donation records, and building fund receipts had been sorted and labeled with small pieces of paper in the nun's handwriting. The evidence represented months of careful detective work. The filing cabinet contained correspondence between Father Morrison and various banks, as well as letters from the diocesan finance office that suggested knowledge of irregularities. Most damning were photocopies of checks made out to cash and signed by Father Morrison, along with deposit slips showing the money going into a personal account rather than church funds. Among the documents, they found a newspaper clipping from the Des Moines Register dated March 15, 1986. The headline read, "Des Moines Priest Dies in Car Accident." The article reported that Father Andrew Morrison, 52, had been killed when his car skidded off an icy road during a winter storm. He had been pastor of St. Augustine's for less than a year. He died 5 months after they confronted him, Hayes observed grimly, and 6 months before our nuns disappeared. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. In a sealed envelope marked Final Instructions, Sister Maria Elena had written, "If we disappear, look for us in Guadalajara, Mexico. Catherine has family connections there through her mother's side, and I have cousins who can help us. We have saved enough money from our small personal allowances to buy bus tickets to the Mexican border." The letter explained their escape plan in detail. They would leave Cedar Rapids at night, take a Greyhound bus to Kansas City, then transfer to a bus bound for El Paso, Texas. From there, they would cross into Mexico and make their way to Guadalajara, where they hoped to start new lives away from the danger they faced. "We cannot risk exposing this corruption through normal channels," Sister Catherine's accompanying note explained. Father Morrison made it clear that the conspiracy reaches into the diocesan hierarchy. "We don't know who we can trust, so we must protect ourselves by disappearing until it's safe to reveal the truth." The implications of the discovery sent shockwaves through St. Margaret's Parish and the Cedar Rapids Catholic community. Father Chen immediately contacted Bishop Michael O'Sullivan in Dubuque, who arrived at the church within hours of learning about the hidden chamber and its contents. Bishop O'Sullivan, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a reputation for handling difficult situations with discretion, examined the evidence with the solemnity it deserved. "This is deeply troubling," he said, after reviewing the documents. "We need to handle this properly, with full transparency and accountability." Detective Hayes, despite his retirement, agreed to assist in analyzing the evidence from a law enforcement perspective. "Even though the statute of limitations has expired for the financial crimes, we have a moral obligation to find out what happened to those two women," he said. The Diocesan Finance Office conducted an immediate audit of St. Margaret's historical records, confirming the nuns' findings. The total embezzlement exceeded $63,000 when adjusted for the full scope of the theft. More disturbing was the discovery that similar financial irregularities had occurred at Father Morrison's previous parishes, suggesting a pattern of corruption that had gone undetected for years. Father Chen made the decision to make the discovery public, working with the diocese to ensure complete transparency. A press conference was held on August 15, 2014, exactly 27 years after the nuns' disappearance, as specified in the title's timeline. The story attracted national attention, with news outlets across the country reporting on the mystery of the missing nuns and the corruption they had uncovered. The Cedar Rapids Gazette ran a front-page story titled, "Missing Nuns, Secret Chamber Reveals Church Corruption." But the most significant development came 3 weeks after the press conference. Maria Santos, a 60-year-old woman living in Guadalajara, Mexico, contacted the Cedar Rapids Police Department through the American consulate. "Dad, I saw the news story on CNN International," she said during a video call with Father Chen and Detective Hayes. "I am Sister Maria Elena Vasquez. Catherine and I have been living in Mexico since 1987. The reunion, conducted via video conference, due to the logistical complexities of international travel for the elderly women, was emotional and profound." Maria Elena, now calling herself Maria Santos and working as a teacher in Guadalajara, appeared healthy but aged by her years of exile. "We never wanted to disappear forever," she explained, tears streaming down her weathered face. "But Father Morrison's threats were very real. When we heard about his death in that car accident, we were even more frightened. We thought his associates might blame us." Catherine O'Brien, now known as Catalina Martinez, had married a Mexican engineer in 1991 and raised 2 children while working as a school administrator. Both women had left religious life but had continued their service through education and community work. "We always hoped that someday it would be safe to reveal the truth," Catherine said during the video call. "We left that evidence hoping that eventually someone would find it and expose the corruption we discovered." The women's families in Iowa and Massachusetts, who had mourned them as dead for nearly 3 decades, were overwhelmed with joy at learning their daughters and sisters were alive and well. Plans were immediately made for emotional reunions that would take months to arrange due to immigration and travel logistics. The Catholic Church formally acknowledged the courage of Sisters Maria Elena and Catherine, recognizing that their actions had protected them from genuine danger while ultimately exposing corruption that might have continued indefinitely. Bishop O'Sullivan issued a public apology for the institutional failures that had forced two faithful young women into exile. The story became a case study in institutional accountability and the importance of protecting whistleblowers. St. Margaret's established a memorial fund in honor of the two women, supporting education initiatives in both Iowa and Mexico. In November 2014, Maria Elena and Catherine returned to Cedar Rapids for the first time in 27 years. The reunion at St. Margaret's Church was attended by hundreds of parishioners, many of whom remembered the young nuns who had vanished on that October night in 1987. Standing in the same sanctuary where they had once prayed, both women expressed forgiveness for those who had forced them into exile, while also emphasizing the importance of courage in facing institutional corruption. "We were young and afraid," Maria Elena said to the packed church, "but we knew that truth and justice were more important than our personal safety. Sometimes doing the right thing requires great sacrifice." The hidden chamber behind the altar was preserved as a reminder of their courage, and a plaque was installed commemorating their dedication to truth and justice. The financial restitution, while symbolic after so many years, was donated to educational charities serving underprivileged children in both Iowa and Mexico. Detective Hayes, now vindicated in his belief that the missing nuns had discovered something significant, reflected on the case that had haunted him for decades. "Sometimes the truth takes 27 years to surface," he said, "but it always finds a way." The mystery that had puzzled Cedar Rapids for nearly 3 decades was finally solved, not through police work or investigative journalism, but through the renovation of an old church and the courage of 2 young women who had risked everything to expose corruption and protect truth. Their story became a testament to the power of conscience and the ultimate triumph of justice, even when delayed by decades of silence and fear.